everybody, and welcome to today's Q&A Live. We have Jessie Kasper from Mindful Methods Companion Coaching in the US, and we are going to be talking about you, your dog, and the anxiety in the room. But I'm not going to talk about Jessie, what she does. I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you more about what she does. I know she's certified in Emotional CPR. So I'm sure everybody would like to know what that is and how it works. Welcome, Jessie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm Jessie from Mindful Methods Companion Coaching. I'm the owner and lead behavioral trainer here. So my current certifications are IAABC ADT. I'm currently testing into my CDBC. So now that I have told all of you that, I better pass, right? I'm also a fear-free certified fear-free certified professional. I am a family dog mediator, and yes, I have my eCPR certification. So that's emotional CPR. So it is a trauma-informed approach to communication, and it just deals in being an active listener, especially when we have people who are quite stressed or traumatized. And I know that seems like a really strong word to use when talking about dogs, but it's really very true that a lot of people are genuinely traumatized by their pets when they are experiencing really tough behavioral issues. And I deal primarily in aggression, fear. I do a lot of reactivity, anxiety, those sorts of things. But when people are getting bit by their dogs, I've heard people kind of equate it to almost being like in an abusive partnership, because sometimes we have those Jekyll and Hyde situations with our dogs where they're fine one day and then the next day they're just an absolute wreck and feel very unpredictable. One day they're loving, one day they're not. And I know that you do a lot.
That's really interesting. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah. And I know you deal with a lot of separation anxiety, and those, I don't personally do that. I refer out to people like you because I feel like having a specialty is such a valid and valuable thing that we really need separation anxiety specialists out there to be handling those cases. So, but in those types of relationships with those pets, they really rule your entire routine, right? How long you can leave your house. And it's kind of the same thing too, if you have an aggressive dog with stranger danger, who can you have over? So they kind of start to take over our whole lives. So that's kind of my philosophy, is that people can absolutely 100% be traumatized by their relationship with their dog. And sometimes I'm walking into a client's home and immediately upon laying eyes on me, they are crying already. We haven't even started talking. So understanding how to calibrate your own communication and when somebody needs advice and when they do not is really, really important, because these people are already stressed, maxed to the limit. And so it's my job to figure out how much do they need to know right now and what information do they need to feel better before they leave their home today.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, we all get dogs to go skipping off into the sunset, and when they have got behavioral issues, there's so many layers of things that people go through. So I know of people that resent their dogs, and there's no shame in that. It's hard if you've got a dog that's struggling with normal life. There's, and you can't do things because people are judging you if you're walking down the street and the dog's, going off like a volcano, and people are like, oh, sort your dog out, and, all that sort of judgment. Or you can't leave the home because your dog stresses out, and then you don't have a life. You feel like you're in prison. That's stressful as well. Yeah. So talk me through how you tackle all that then. And I'd just be interested in the chat too, anybody who feels that they're going through something like this. And before you answer that too, I think that abusive relationship analogy is really interesting, because that's what it's like, isn't it? They're nice to you one day and they're loving one day, and the next day they're you know, being nasty and horrible, and you know, that sort of sense of coercion. And yeah, sorry, I'm gone. Sorry.
No, I honestly, I think people feel like sometimes, I'm sure you've heard this before with clients where they're like, my dog bit me, and then they acted sorry about it, and then they were being sweet afterwards and all of that, and they're not quite sure how to read that dynamic with their dog too. So yeah, it feels quite abusive. It's like emotional whiplash. So one of the first ways that I try to gauge emotional burnout before I even walk into the home is on my intake forms. I use something called the Zaret Burden Interview Score. And what that is it's a series of 18 questions. It's actually originally was made for people who were caregiving to individuals who were like terminally ill. They had family members that were under functioning. That's what we'll call it. And that they themselves are over functioning for, right? And that contributes to burnout. So it is a series of 18 questions that like social workers or case managers will ask to just kind of gauge how the human who is caregiving feels, because my philosophy is you have to put on your own oxygen mask before you can help others, right? That's the first thing they tell you on an airplane is don't help anyone else. You put your own oxygen mask on. And I can't help people fix their dogs if they are lacking in their own self-care and stuff. So this version of the ZBI, which is what I'm going to call it going forward, ZBI, is modified for caregivers of pets that are struggling behaviorally. So within those 18 questions, there's a ranking from 0 to, let me pull it up. I have all my resources here. From 0 to 4, 0 being never, 1 being rarely, 2 being sometimes, 3 being frequently, and 4 being nearly always. And then at the end of this questionnaire, there's a total that is used to kind of gauge this total number of where they are in stress. So the total number possible is 72. Nobody ever reaches that high, at least not that I've seen, but kind of how we interpret that is any number that's around 17 is going to be very high stress. Any number at 32 is extreme stress. And I see a lot of clients coming in with their ZBI scores around 32, 33, 34. It's not at all unusual to be around 17. So this really helps me figure out kind of where my clients are. And do you want me to read you what the questions are and how they rank? Okay.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
And you guys are welcome to reach out for me for resources and to see these things. One of the things that I actually do is I do have like a trainer mentorship program where I do provide my intake forms. I have a separate ZBI form. I have follow-up forms, all of those things that are available if you want to kind of, you know, increase your intake processes and stuff like that. I have resources for that. So, and I have this all automated out on a nice little form. So, so the first question is, I feel that the time I spend caring for my pets leaves little time for myself. I feel stressed between caring for my pet and meeting other responsibilities with work and family. I feel embarrassed over my pet's behavior. I feel angry when I'm around my pet. I feel my pet affects my relationship with my friends and family in a negative way. I feel afraid of what the future holds for my pet. I feel strained when I'm around my pet. I feel like my health has suffered because of my involvement with my pet. I feel my social life has suffered because I'm caring for my pet. I feel uncomfortable having friends over because of my pet. I feel I do not have enough money to care for my pet in addition to the rest of my expenses. I feel I will be unable to take care of my pet for much longer. I feel I've lost control of my life since my pet's illness or behavioral issues. I wish I could leave the care of my pet to someone else. I feel uncertain what to do about my pet. I feel like I should be doing more for my pet. I feel like I could do a better job caring for my pet. And then overall, how burdened do you feel by your pet? So this also gives me a lot of feedback about what areas they're ranking highest on so that I can understand how to calibrate my communication and my training plans and potentially even my feedback, especially if someone's feeling like they could be doing more for their pet. I definitely don't want to sit down with them and make them feel like they're not doing enough for their pet, right? So this has been really, really helpful for me and my trainers to kind of understand what we're walking into. And like I said, a lot of times we get there and clients are already crying the moment we walk through the door, and that is tracking with these ultra high ZBI scores. So we can also wake up in the morning and say, okay, we better have an extra shot of espresso.
It's tough, isn't it? And you know, when you've got a dog with behavioral problems, the most trainers, not people like yourself, but I mean most trainers, and I'm totally generalizing, of course, focus on the dog, and they don't necessarily take into the human side of that. And I mean, we know that if the human is stressed, the dog is going to be stressed, and therefore the dog is going to be acting out or challenged to be its best version of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And that goes back to the analogy of putting on your own oxygen masks before we can help others. I cannot help your dog if you are so overwhelmed that you're immobilized or don't know where to start. And that really helps me calibrate my training plans. Do we need maybe 3 or 4 behaviors that work incredibly well in a variety of scenarios for these people versus trying to really cram as many processes as possible? And then I like to keep my homework for every human very digestible. But can we get away with 5 to 10 minutes 3 times per day? Or is this going to be a household that really 5 to 10 minutes once per day, 1 to 3 minutes twice a day? And so I use a really collaborative process with my clients, and they can tell me this didn't work for me, this was too much, all of that. So I like to have that collaboration.
Yeah, and chicken and egg question for you. So if the dog is doing unwanted behaviors, is that where the I know stress comes for, you know, for the guardian, or is the dog's channeling off what the guardian's maybe got other stresses in its life that, you know, so it becomes that horrible catch-22 situation.
Yeah, it does. And I actually work with a lot of therapists and psychiatrists myself. I think it's really interesting for whatever reason they choose my program. So I end up working with a lot of special needs teachers as well. So these are people that are really in in a capacity where they are professionally caregivers too. So, and it's like 75% of my clients. You know, a lot of nurses, doctors, you know, your veterinarians and your dog trainers are certainly going to fall under this category of people who also are in professions where they're caregiving professionally and then coming home and caregiving again. Maybe they have children and all of those things. So we do need to think bigger outside the box than just the human is stressed because of the dog. We run into a lot of burnout with people in certain professions. If you have a client that is also an animal rescuer, beware. They are going to be really fatigued, and it's going to even make your training plans that much harder. So I like to do with my clients what I call a stress vacation. And not only for the dog, you know, if we have a dog that has a lot of chronic stress going on, and maybe we need to get a veterinarian on board and a diagnosis or vet behaviorist. In the meantime, let's not engage in activities that both of you don't enjoy. So if you find the walk really, really stressful, for either of you, let's just skip it, right? Relying on management to begin with, and a lot of enrichment, easy mental work, easy tasks, while we get the human stress down. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you went to the therapist, the first thing they would tell you is you need to avoid this overwhelming stress every single day. And we need to do that for both the human and the behaviorally needy dog. Because
Yeah,
there is that chicken and egg question. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, there's also, I mean, so you're talking about sort of trauma, I guess, for having a dog with behavioral issues. But then I guess there's the other type of trauma where maybe you're out with your dog, you're having a nice time, and then you're attacked by off-leash dogs or whatever, and you're traumatized, the dog's traumatized.
Yeah.
That's tough as well. Like how do you sort of deal with that?
Um, yeah, I mean, that's the same kind of concept, especially if the dog has trauma where they've been attacked, and then the human also has that residual as well. We would want to just start by avoiding areas where either of you will be triggered, right? Till we
Mm.
can get the proper intervention on board. And I feel like a lot of times people walk away from my consults just saying, oh, I feel so much better just from
Yeah, lighter.
it is so much lighter because, like you said, there is that judgment where they talk to their friends, their family, and there's so much judgment, especially if you're a rescuer, you talk to other rescuers, everyone has an opinion.
Oh yeah. Totally, totally. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you something. I can't, you just carry on, so I can't remember what it was. It'll come to me.
So I think once we get farther in the training package and then people start to really hone in their fluency and their skills with the behaviors that we need. And I do behavior modification, so it's way different than obedience training, right? Like, it
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of fluency, and it's hard work. So a lot of times avoiding those situations that are very triggering or traumatic, where those things that happened in the past, is going to be necessary until we can build the client's confidence up in their handling skills to get back to that level where they feel comfortable walking their dog. And a lot of times I'm not only coaching the dog, but I'm coaching the human when we're out there too, like deep breaths, right? When the dog starts reacting or the client gets scared, just talking about their grip on the leash and all of those things. So it's um a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone has got a dog with behavioral issues and you identify that there's an element of trauma there, and you want to put their oxygen mask on first. I mean, other than telling them to take deep breaths and don't tighten the leash, what are other sort of examples can you give that might just help them? I guess you're looking at their mental state, aren't you? Not so much obviously their behavior, not tightening the leash, but that still comes back a lot, I think, to how they're feeling emotionally.
Yeah. So typically, I'll just tell you kind of how my consults are structured. So I have an info sheet that takes people about 30 to 45 minutes to fill out. And
Wow, that's not.
yeah, it's a big behavior sheet, everything you could
Yeah.
possibly think of. So we go over that first, and it's mainly just me asking questions and listening. It's not really a time for me to kind of give advice, because I find the more I let people talk, the more they tell me if I don't interrupt them. And then at the end of my intake form, we get to their ZBI score. So I tell them what their score was, how we interpret it, and we kind of go over the areas where they feel most stressed. And then I give them even more time to talk about the emotional element of what they're dealing with their dog. One of the hardest things that I do with clients is sharing silence with them. So I think as humans, we want to immediately step in and fix. But during this time, I really just listen closely and nod my head and give them 10 seconds after they stop speaking and see if they want to tell me more. But when I'm sure they're done with all of that, I actually have a handout for self-care that I do give them. And then we go into that portion of my consult. So one of the first things that I tell people to do, and we've touched on this already a little bit, is what I call protecting your peace. So that's going to be avoiding or excusing yourself from conversations with those that minimize your situation or are committed to misunderstanding you. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I like committed to misunderstanding you.
Yes. There are definitely people out there that no matter what you tell them, they don't understand the bond between a dog and a human. It's just a dog, those types of minimizing things that people say.
You've created this because you spoilt the dog. It's your fault. Victim blaming.
Yes, exactly. So I give them some phrases to help them out. Sorry, I have my hand out pulled out over here so I
You're
can
right.
keep myself going. So when someone is giving you advice you don't agree with, thank you for your concern. I will consider it. Because so many people, especially with aggressive dogs, are like, well, they need, a strong pack leader, right? And then they're working with someone like me who doesn't buy into alpha theory. And I'm like, just don't argue with these people. Just
Pointless.
thank
Yeah.
you. I will consider it. When someone asks you how it's going with training, that commonly is a problem for you. We are making progress. Thank you for asking. So I tell people to just say some little white lies, right? Just don't engage, don't give them details. I can tell that you really care. Thank you for your concern. We're making progress, right? So just little easy outs for those types of situations. And then again, quality over quantity. So focusing on engaging in activities with your dog that you both enjoy. So this may mean skipping training or avoiding triggers on days when stress, physical discomfort. I see a lot of people in chronic pain too, and dogs in chronic pain.
Yeah.
Or exhaustion is high for either party. And then opting for more passive training that uses enrichment or mental stimulation to tire out your dog and help them regulate. I encourage people to do a lot of individual focus. A lot of times I ask people, what are you doing for yourself for self-care? And they're like, nobody's ever asked me that before. It's astonishing the amount of people that tell me that nobody asks, or I'm the first trainer that has ever asked them what they're doing for self-care. And then sometimes they'll say stuff like, oh, well, I always wanted to take my dog to agility. Maybe we'll do that. Because if they're not doing something, then I ask them, is there something you have been meaning to do for yourself that you're not currently doing? And then I'll get the answers like, well, I've always wanted to take my dog to agility. No, that's still dog centric. What we really need you to do is something that's just for yourself. So especially if you're in a profession where you're caregiving for others, or you have a terminally ill relative that you're caring for, I really want them to try to think of something that they want to do for themselves. So if they have a partner, do something meaningful together that doesn't involve their dogs. So I'll give them simple date night ideas, depending on the time of year, picnic in the park. The women that I work with always love this one when their partners are sitting there and they're like, see, I've been telling you we need to go on a date, So it's kind of nice to be a cheerleader sometimes for the primary caregivers in the home. Which I don't know about you, but my main clientele at this
Female
point in time, it's
woman.
99.99% women reach out to me to hire me.
Yeah. And that can also be really problematic too, because especially if it's a couple and maybe he's not on board with the training, and I've had plenty of couples where the husband has said, it's just a dog, get rid of it. Or if you don't solve this, to me, as in this is on you now, we're going to get rid of the dog, which is a horrible way of trying to manipulate me as a trainer, which I don't appreciate. But and the poor woman sitting there, a lot of pressure, but yeah, so that can cause a lot of friction in relationships and also with other people, not in the home relationships, but also family and friends as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, what else do I got on here? It's stay-at-home parents or caregiving for chronically ill individuals in your household also increases your risk for burnout and fatigue. So sometimes even just pointing these things out to them, I think sometimes people don't realize the gravity of the situation and all that they have going on. So kind of helping them see how hard they're working so they don't feel so bad. So many people just feel bad about not doing enough for their dogs, right? So
Yeah, I think finding those little steps, the little wins, helping them see how far they've come, because they often don't know. Like with separation anxiety, maybe they started on a 30-second absence and then they're on 30 minutes and they're like, oh, we don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And like, wait a minute, you
Yeah,
couldn't leave the house at all a minute ago. So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and I always tell my clients to engage in positive self-talk too, like you said, with those small wins. So I call it stinking thinking. Clients like they'll always be like, you're stinking thinking again. So it's just easy for them to remember when you use little catchphrases sometimes
Yeah,
with
that's
them.
cute.
But I always, on this handout, it says you are enough and you are doing a good job. Because I want them to refer to this when they're feeling down about it, to know that I think you're fantastic. Letting go of guilt, you're doing the best you can. And I always tell my clients, even if you can only bring 50% to the table today, if you brought it all, you brought 100% of what you're capable of. So I don't like hearing people say like, well, I didn't bring 100% today because I didn't have it in me. Well, you brought what you had, right? So that's good enough. And then also that their dog loves them. I think people, particularly when they just have reactivity and fear and anxiety going on, not so much with aggression. I think that can be a hard thing to say to somebody whose dog is biting them, right? Your dog loves you. But when we're dealing with fear, anxiety, reactivity, even if you don't feel like you're not enriching your dog sure loves you. And that's always very obvious when I go into client homes, how much their dogs really love them,
It's
especially in
hard.
crisis.
Yeah. It's hard for guardians to remember that though. It's good that you're telling them that, because and unfortunately it's really easy to get frustrated with your dog because they're doing, being reactive. Very easy to get frustrated. And then of course you're going to start feeling guilty. Your dog's probably forgotten it straight away, but like, you know what I mean? Like they're very forgiving, aren't they, in that sense?
Yeah,
Elaine says, is it possible to email us the handouts, please?
sure. I'd be
Yeah,
happy to.
we're once at the end, we'll put your links in at the bottom as well, so people can reach out to you. We'll put them in the chat room. So
Okay,
chat,
sounds good.
yeah, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk? You've got on that list there, or otherwise we can maybe open up for some questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple more good things
Yeah,
here.
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I always talk to my clients about managing overwhelm. I've got grounding activities on here. So when they're feeling overwhelmed by their dogs, I always recommend that they go and drink some cold water, run their hands under cold water. I deal with actually a lot of people with sensory issues, so particularly sound sensitive human beings. When the dog is barking and the kids are running around screaming and all of this stuff is going on and you're trying to cook dinner and all of that, right? I want you to stop and assess your needs, drink some cold water, run your hands underwater, put on your face. The 5 4 3 2 1 method. So if you feel like you're in a situation with or without your dog where you're panicking or on the verge of panic, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Triangle breathing. So are you familiar with triangle breathing?
I'm not sure. Probably not then if I'm saying I'm not sure. No.
Okay.
Let's say no.
So close your eyes and imagine a triangle in your brain. Start at the bottom left. Breathe in for a count of 3 while tracing the first side of the triangle. Hold your breath for a count of 3 while tracing the second side. Breathe out for a count of 3 while tracing the final side. So it just helps you kind of align your mind and your body again in moments of panic. And then one of my favorite things is actually an application for your phone called Insight Timer. And this offers meditation, soundtracks, talks, groups, and breathwork exercises. So these types of things might be something that I would recommend for people who are having a problem figuring out how to self-care in the moment, all of these kinds of things for them. And then the final thing that I have is finding community. So seeking active listeners that allow you to vent without being fixed, without trying to fix, And I work with this wonderful vet behaviorist called Insight Animal Behavior. Their website is insightfulanimals.com. And most of where I learned all of this stuff, along with the emotional CPR, actually came from this woman that works there. She does their intake for behavior cases, but she's going to be graduating this May for veterinary social work. And she kind of introduced me to all of these concepts and runs those eCPR classes. But once per month, they actually offer a free support group for people who are struggling with behaviorally needy animals. And it's called Living with and Loving Pets with Behavioral Challenges. And you can find that on their website under their human support services menu option. So it's people with, there's a lot of animal rescues in there. There's trainers in there. But it meets once a month for about an hour, and it's not for any sort of advice. You just go in there and you listen to other people and tell your story. And sometimes people just walk away from that feeling either number one, gosh, at least it's not that bad.
Oh.
Or just that, just that there's people that are also dealing with this sort of thing,
Yeah,
the world
it's
and community.
it's good to know that. I mean, it's bad that people have to deal with it, but it's good to know you're not alone, I think.
Yep.
One of the things I do with my clients if they're having a moment is it's a yoga exercise, but anyone can do it. And you can, if you're not physically mobile, you can just do it in a chair. But all it is a standing forward fold. And it puts, you're just literally just flopping over. So all the blood is going to your head, and it's actually very calming. And I think that's can be really helpful. I was, if I've got, so interestingly enough, so dealing with anxiety, I don't know, I couldn't tell you a percentage, but there's been a number of my clients that have been on medication, anti-anxiety medication from a doctor, and so is their dog. So there's kind of this symbiotic relationship, but if they're worried about doing the training for their dog to be alone, I'm like, well, calm your mind, take the time, do some deep breathing, get your dog to deep breathe alongside of you, because they will kind of join in, won't they? Yeah. So it's good that you can help them become a more calm person, going to be a more calm dog.
Yeah. But you guys should definitely go follow this woman. She's wonderful. I must plug her because
Yeah. Is it, did I write it right? Insightfulanimals.com?
yeah, her name though is Valerie Bogie, Bogie. She's on social media as Valerie Bogie. But she also does run a one-on-one support group too. So if you go on insightfulanimals.com, you can actually purchase half-hour blocks, and that's just one-on-one with her. And really, she just is there to listen.
Yeah, that's lovely.
And
It's
you
good
can
that she
cry
does.
and break down, and she's just going to sit there and listen to you and maybe prompt some open-ended questions, probably about self-care, if I know anything about Valerie and how she operates. But yeah,
Yeah,
so.
lovely. Oh, that's great. All right. Have you got anything else there?
No, those are the tools that I use as far as
Yeah.
assessment goes, and just helping people realize kind of why things are happening with stress the way that they are. I think that can be probably one of the most powerful things, is just to get people to take a step back and assess their situation. So
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much their own stress impacts their doggy. So I had 3 questions come in. I know you've seen them. I hope you saw the last one I sent through yesterday. But we might, if you're cool, we might start with the one from Cinnamon. I don't think she could come. There's 2 of them at least I don't think are here. And if anybody's got any questions for Jessie, just write them in the chat and we'll get to them in a minute. So now Cinnamon's was rather long, so I'm just going to paraphrase it because I know you already know what it is. So she's got a pity girl, sweet pity girl. She's not the same dog she used to be. And they're obviously both distressed about it, which makes a lot of sense. She rescued her from a hide kill shelter 12 years ago, an hour before she was due to be euthanized. 2 years of behavioral and destructive issues. She became a healthy, happy dog on the night of March the 6th. So not that long ago, she was attacked by her two neighbours' wolf dogs that got into the yard, jumped a 6-foot high fence. And this breaks my heart reading this part. She was frozen in fear and wouldn't come to me. Oh, poor thing. And she had to lead her inside while the dogs growled and threatened me. That would be so traumatic for both of them. I can't even imagine going through that. Collar was soaked in blood. Her new rabies tag was missing. She had cuts on her neck. Anyway, yeah, she talks about what happened when the officers came to her house. Yeah, it's not a nice situation. Yeah, and then of course she's still got ongoing trauma because the dogs still live next door and it's going through small claims court. So then her dog spent the next day at the vet getting subacute IV antibiotics, pain medication, wounds stitched, etc., etc. Wounds have healed. Her appetite is back. She's walking better, though still slowly. Now, she says, I believe she has PTSD. I would imagine Cinnamon probably has PTSD too. Her eyes are dull. She's lethargic. She doesn't bark with excitement when I'm preparing her meals, doesn't even care about treats. And of course, she's tried all things, including rescue remedy, homeopathics, some supplements, and ordered a book on EFT for pets. And then, of course, she does actually say she has PTSD herself from 3 car accidents in a 7-year period. Yeah, that's so sad. Yeah. And she says, oh, see, here we go. She says, now I don't know how to help her dog, Bridgie, and she feels depressed and resentful. I'm assuming of her neighbors, not her dog. But yeah, that's such a tough one. So over to you, Jessie.
I'm having a hard time remembering. Did she have a question, a firm question on that? Because I don't want to disregard.
No, I don't think she has a firm question so much as, I guess she's looking for answers on how to move forward, how to make her dog feel better as well. Because, when she says her dog's just not the happy girl she used to be, and given it was only basically 3 weeks ago, I guess, it's going to take a little bit of time. But having the dog still living next door must be devastating as well. So,
yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry that happened. That's absolutely awful and traumatic. I really could not even imagine.
Me neither.
I did read the whole thing when Ness sent it over to me. And one thing that really stuck out about the way that you handled it was I would have gone ballistic on my neighbors. And it just seemed like you were so calm about the whole thing. And that's what really blew me away, is what a good job you did in the moment. Because you didn't get the answers that you wanted out of that situation. And because there are wolf hybrid dogs, right? I think there was some questions over whether or not it was legal to have them and would they be removed. And so coming to terms with all of that, it appears from what you wrote that you just did a way better job than I probably would have given that scenario. So I want to acknowledge first what a strong person you are, and that I think you're wonderful. So with the 12-year-old dog, obviously my first concern there is going to be potentially osteo issues for the dog, especially then given some sort of traumatic attack. So did we already have any arthritis or anything like that on board? Is the dog still taking pain medication? I think you'll find if you ask me questions, I have a lot more questions. So my number one concern would be whether or not dogs are still in pain after these sort of things. Do we have
3 weeks?
nerve damage, right? It's a short amount of time. And particularly when people tell me that their dog's eyes look funny, they can't really put their finger on it, but they describe it as sometimes glassy or cloudy or just not.
She says dull here.
They have a real dull look. And that's what I hear a lot with dogs who are actually still in pain. So my number one thing would be, maybe do we need to ask the vet if we can just extend a pain trial and kind of see how that goes? But otherwise, single event aversive learning is a very serious thing that happens to dogs. So for those watching that have never heard that term, it's when the trauma is so overwhelming that it only takes one time for it to happen to teach a dog kind of like this lifelong lesson, or to make an environment very scary, even when the trigger isn't present. And of course, we have these dogs living behind you, they're barking, those sort of things. A lot of times when we have single event aversive learning, it does require a diagnosis from a behaviorally savvy veterinarian, or more preferably a vet behaviorist if you have one near you. If you do not, there are a lot of vet behaviorists in the country who do offer vet to vet consultations, but your primary veterinarian has to be willing to do that service on your behalf. So I did plug insightfulanimals.com earlier. They are a vet behaviorist that is willing to do vet to vet consultations. So they are not free, but they can help guide your primary veterinarian if a VB is not in your immediate area. I would say if the nutraceuticals are not working, then you may want to ask a veterinarian's opinion on clinical stress at this point in time. So, especially because
Yeah.
the dog has to live right there with its triggers.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. When we have unavoidable stress going on, that's when I really want to kind of lean into veterinary providers on that one.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like Cinnamon herself has got some, she needs to work through some stuff as well, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which always, as trainers, we're always walking this fine line between staying in our lane as a dog trainer and being a therapist and all of that. So it's hard for me to say, I don't know this woman's resources. I don't know what her time kind of looks like, but yeah, I would really just encourage some self-care and trying to do something that she's been meaning to do for herself.
Yeah. And I think, she says, now I have a dog who seems despondent as if she's given up on life. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, I mean, this might come across badly, but hopefully it is something like she's still in pain. And if you can get on top of that, that's actually a pretty good, I don't want to say easy fix, but it's a better fix than having to go through some, the whole she's traumatized, she can't go out in the backyard, she's, God, I hope she bounces back to what she was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just awful.
Yeah. I know what you mean. We hate to say that when you're like, well, I hope it's a medical issue, right? We never hope it's a medical issue, but yeah, going into the territory of chronic clinical level stress and anxiety for pets is a difficult road to walk down. So,
Mm. And
but
if
it could be both those things at the same time.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. And I guess if she does have to go get prescribed medication, it may not be forever. It may just be for a short time where she can work through it and she'll come out the other side, fingers crossed.
yeah.
So Katie says, the dog I adopted 4 years ago was found in a ditch, severely wounded. So obviously the dog's suffered some sort of trauma. We don't know if he was hit by a car or thrown out of one. Anyway, he's extremely reactive to cars, and even the sound of one far away can make him freeze. Even a plane can have that effect. I keep him away from triggers to keep him safe, as he will go completely out of his mind if we're too close. I've done 2 years of Grish's Academy, Grish Stewart, plus many more fear-free training. My question is, how do I know if his reaction is fear, anger, or a mix of all that and genetics? He's a Belgian Malinois. I just can't see the difference. I'm not sure what that last bit means, but yeah. Belgian Malinois are very sensitive dogs. I have 3. They're highly sensitive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yes. Okay, that's a tricky one. And I wonder, it's I always that relationship between a dog and a human, like if she sees the car or hears the plane, she's like, oh gosh. I mean, I'm not saying she does this, but a natural reaction would be, I need to save my dog. Oh, which would be also triggering the dog.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think the genetic portion of it is one that we'll just never know for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's such a big question mark over the past. Found in a ditch, was it hit by a car? We don't know, all of those things. So that's one that we'll never be able to answer. And I always tell people it's maybe not necessarily helpful to always speculate about why or what. All that matters is how we address it and what we do going forward, because I don't think living in the past with those sorts of things is helpful. And I don't want to say that putting a label on it as fear, frustration, or anxiety is necessarily immediately helpful either, because the way that I would address that as a trainer, no matter what was driving it, would look pretty similar. But I do think potentially in this situation, working with a behavioral veterinarian or behaviorally savvy primary veterinarian could be warranted too. If you really want to know what the motivator is, the people that diagnose are going to be much better at telling you what that is. So when I communicate with vet behaviorists, I write down body language, what I saw exactly when the trigger came off, because that helps them to say, okay, this is fear, aggression, this is generalized anxiety, this is frustration based, you know. And I know there's a difference of opinion in the training world, I think, about when we start labeling things, are we getting into that area of diagnosing? So I'm always very careful, especially when I'm talking to a lot of people about the assumptions that I make. So I haven't seen that dog. I would love to, if I was on the case, see a video. That might guide me a little bit better. But one of the things that I do notice is these are actually all high-pitched noises that you're describing. So I would have a lot of questions about if there are other high-pitched noises that bother this dog. Do low frequencies also bother the dog? Just because if you guys follow Eileen Anderson, she's like incredible with sound, and I highly recommend that you read her sound blogs, but it's a lot easier to address sometimes higher pitched frequencies that bother dogs than it is lower, because there are some low pitched frequencies that can even penetrate concrete and stuff like that. So could we counter condition and get the dog to accept some sort of earmuffs or something outside, particularly for those high pitched situations? Those are going to be able to block some sound, whereas obviously your thunder and fireworks aren't going to be very helpful with some
Yeah.
ear noise canceling gear. But yeah, I feel like I went off on a tangent there, but
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think you were suggesting, if it could be some part of it, maybe sound sensitivity. But yeah, obviously there's something else going on. How if a car drives past and he's bouncing up and down, reacting, then we have to, yeah.
and there is a high comorbidity as well with sound sensitivity and discomfort and pain in dogs. So that would be a big question I would have too. So if you can find yourself a really good trainer to advocate on your behalf and to start asking these important questions and help you communicate with your veterinarian, I think that that's a valid route to go. And I know it's so hard to have dogs with sound sensitivities. So
My boy is sound sensitive. Planes, yes. Garbage truck day, yes. And thunderstorms. And I have tried to we'll figure out if there's pain involved. Been told that there's not, but I always wonder, you've always got to question not every vet or every, practitioner is as good as the next one. So I guess it's a little bit of, maybe do your research and some stuff. So
have you ever asked your vet to do a pain trial?
he hasn't. No, I did take him to a chiropractor. I haven't actually gone to a vet. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in search of vets. Yeah, I'm not happy with my vet. So I'm not unhappy, but I just sometimes you think there's something missing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I actually always tell my clients to trust your gut, because they always know. They get this itch and they've been told no, no, no. I'm like, get a second opinion, you know?
Yeah.
And they feel, I think, sometimes then crazy for everyone keeps telling me, no, this doesn't exist, but I really feel like there's something else going on with my dog.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I had a client with a dash hound, and she was sending me videos of her training for separation anxiety, and I could see a limp. I could see it on all these videos. Something not right. I think she went to at least two vets to try and get a diagnosis and didn't have any luck. So I believe, yeah, she just kind of went, no, they're telling me there's nothing wrong. So this is a while ago, so I can't remember the details, but
yeah, it's hard because pain trials are regarded as being very safe, and the risk from that is very low, right? It's typically very well tolerated. So it can be frustrating as a behavior professional when we have training about the ways that pain presents in behavior, but clinically they're not presenting that way in their body, right? For a lot of different reasons in a vet's office, adrenaline
mm,
and all of that is going on. That is probably the hardest part of my job is
yeah.
advocating for and trying not to step on toes, right? I'm not trying to tell
Oh,
people how
yeah.
to do their jobs, that's for
No,
sure.
no, no, absolutely. Yeah, that is tough. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think people appreciate how much pain can impact behavior, like big style.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, dogs can be so stoic. Like that Rottweiler behind me on the wall, he's passed now, but he was a very stoic dog, and if something was going on with him, you had to be a bit of a pet detective
Yeah.
to see, oh, you're not quite yourself, but he'll be telling me, no, 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 I'm all right. And I'm like, not sure. But yeah, so it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got one more question here. If anyone's got any questions, start typing. So this is a interesting question. So this lady's got two, and I know you've read this already, but two 4.5 pound, I don't know what 4.5 pound is in kilos. She's got two 4.5 pound neutered poodles, 2.5 and 3 years old. They've been trained to use puppy pads in the shower. After 6 months, one dog has decided he wants to pee outside of the shower on the tip of the stool. The other dog doesn't seem to want to see the pads at all anymore. So it sounds like one of them's peeing outside and the other one's not using them at all. They're in an apartment, so hard for her to get up and down. I'm assuming, is this something I am fighting by going against nature? Am I asking something they simply can't do because ideally, I would like both my dogs to hit the drain hole, but I seem to be only able to get one boy to do it while the other knows what I'm asking but refuses to take on the job. Um, she's saying, can you enlighten me without just saying the dog's doing what nature has created? She used to have two Bengal cats that used the toilet. She lives in an apartment, so have to use the elevator to go up and down. Yeah. That's your thoughts, please.
Okay. I actually typed my thoughts out because this is actually quite a complicated question that I have a lot more questions regarding. So I'll just read what I wrote here.
I'm not sure, and I don't know who it is. They didn't leave their name, so unfortunately, I can't. I don't even know if they're watching this, if they're live with us. So if you're watching this live, please say hi, so we can talk. Maybe if Jessie's got questions for you.
I don't necessarily know if they're here, if we'll have enough time to go through all my
Yeah.
questions, but these are just some thought-provoking questions about kind of where
Yeah.
my mind goes. Um, so does the shower have a step up into it? Do we have any known osteo or medical issues on board for these dogs? I know they're quite young, but the statistics for osteoarthritis, according to the CAM Institute, is that 40% of dogs over the age of 1 already have arthritis, 80% by the age of 8. So it is a young dog's disease. So my mind immediately when a dog just stops doing something is, are you hurting, right? And one of the most common culprits is just osteopain or muscle pain. So poodles, I think, are more prone to spinal issues too. So if you've never done like a DNA test on your dog with the health panel, like an Embark, if there are any genetic markers for any sorts of degenerative diseases, I would potentially run those. I just like to run them on dogs. I think they're fabulous. So, um, it, along with that, then, are there any issues navigating any other types of uneven surfaces or stairs? So if any refusal to do that in that same dog, then I would be wondering if actually just jumping into the shower is not a comfortable thing for them. Then what is their nail health like? So if they have very long nails, is that affecting their grip on the shower floor? As we know, shower floors tend to be quite slippery, which is very scary. So then is the shower floor slippery? Is there a way that we can make, they sell like mats that can provide some grip that we walking up to the pee pad maybe or something like that. I don't know what the space allows for, but is it possible that the confinement of the shower stall area does not provide enough room that the dogs feel they need to get into the proper position? So it sounds like for this particular dog, they actually want to lift their leg if they're peeing onto the lip of the shower. So is that confinement maybe not conducive to peeing in the position they want to be? Is there anything that could be placed in the shower to let them lift their leg on to? Would that maybe help? They sell some things like that for the yard. So, like little mini fire hydrants and stuff. So potentially something like that
Cute.
you could target.
Yeah.
No. And then are you cleaning with enzymatic cleaner and a black light to ensure that it's all getting cleaned up? So even if you have tile in your area, that's a porous material that pee can soak down in under the tiles and stuff like that. So do we actually just have a scent issue going on now at this point? Is this something we can realistically expect to resolve if the urine has kind of soaked in? So and then the last thing I would want to bring up is that one of the most important things for agency in dogs, though, is getting to choose where they pee. So that's kind of why they sniff a lot before going. They'll pee a little bit, save some urine, sniff some more, go some more in a different place.
Yeah.
Soiling in and I know that this commenter inquirer did not want to hear this, but it's possible that soiling in the same area constantly is just a turnoff, just naturally to the dog. Either from cleanliness if it's soiled in there already and they don't want to step into it, or just not having that agency to relieve themselves where they find it's most pleasurable to do so. So if I had a client with a dog that was choosing to pee somewhere other than pee pads in a normal area of the house, we'd probably start by placing pee pads where they want to pee to give them some semblance of success and to also take the cleanup load off the human. And then we would make the area larger than necessary. We would slowly move those pee pads to the desired area and then begin reducing pee pad size if needed. We may also take a dirty pee pad and put it in the correct area to try to draw them over there. If we catch them using the correct area, we have a treat party with high value food. So if you guide your dog over to the correct area and they use that area, we want to make sure that we're having this big old treat party afterwards. We're raining down high value treats, chicken, cheese, turkey, those sorts of things, whatever your dog can have, but really make it worth their while to make the right choice. Now, this is kind of an odd area because you're talking about it being inside of a shower stall and the dog is peeing right next to it. So, in that case, then I may instruct you to not give free access to the inappropriate area anymore. So that might look like closing a door, baby gates, or pens, and then retraining the appropriate area on a schedule. So for puppies, we'd be recommending like every 2 hours. For adult dogs, probably would look like every 4 hours. And then have a celebration with high value treats if they target the correct area. So retraining this behavior will require some form of pretty constant supervision, though, particularly because we're missing the mark probably by a foot, right? So, yeah, it's difficult. That's a hard question.
Yeah, no, but your suggestions are great and good points as well. You know, that Roddy behind me, typical boy, if he thought he was going out for a walk, he would load up with water. He'd just start drinking loads of water so he could pee
How
all
funny.
over the world. He's just
How,
like, yep, I like to pee.
how funny.
Yeah.
I took a course through Dr. Amber Batson. It was a 1 year long mentorship with her. It was wonderful if you're familiar with Dr. Batson. But one of the things she really stressed with behavior modification is making sure that the dogs have a lot of agency. And one of the biggest things she talks about was having a wee wherever they want to have a wee at, right? So she's talking about in outside, obviously, but just making sure that, you know, if we're asking them to go on concrete, that we do allow them some spots in the grass because it is mentally for them
Yeah, it's important. Yeah.
healthcare things. So
I guess when you talk about, you know, when you're taking your dog for a walk, they're out there reading the community news when they're smelling other dogs' pees, and if your dog maybe they have that need to spread their own community news in a natural environment, because I guess if they're in a shower stall, they can't. They know no one else can access their what they have to say.
yeah, yeah, that's a huge part of it is that it's I tell my clients it's like social media posts. You know,
Yeah,
all the light posts in the neighborhood, that's your Twitter, right? It's oh, let's go see what this
yeah,
posted today, you know. So it's a huge mental thing for dogs. So and I know people living in apartments, it can be harder, and especially with very tiny
yeah.
dogs where their bladders aren't as big, but um I would definitely say just making sure that you're at least getting out a few times a week for a nice sniff walk and a forest preserve or something like that if you have the capability and the mobility to be doing those things. And just trying to make sure that your dog's worlds are expanded.
Yeah.
They are getting those opportunities to mark. Sometimes giving them the appropriate opportunities to mark can help with
Oh, yeah.
inappropriate representation. So I don't know.
So after us saying, well, we don't get many men as clients, Brendan has written something. Go, Brendan. So I'll just read it out so for everybody. I have a 7-year-old female Bitzer, possibly Amstaff and Kelpie. Had her since she was 4 months old. She was found abandoned with her puppy siblings and an abscess on her side. Anubis, oh, I love that name, gets very aggressive, tries to bite through the fence with neighboring dogs. We've tried introducing them outside on the street, neutral territory, and the other dog submits. She's younger than Newbie, but Anubis Newbie had her hackles up and tried to bite the other dog. She was the same with the other neighbor's dog. I don't take her for walks in the daytime anymore, due to her aggression towards most dogs. She particularly dislikes female dogs and little ones of any sex. Any advice would be much appreciated because she can't even go. Brendan is my husband. I'm marrying. She can't even go. Sorry for laughing. Can't even go to her own garden without incident. I do have a canine decoding aggression and reactivity summit coming up next month. So if you do want to be a part of that, join my Facebook group or make sure you're on my email list. I'll be sending out some information on that. But I'm sure Jessie has some information to share as well.
Yeah, fence fighting is something that I deal with pretty often. So while we're training, one thing that we have to do is discontinue the practice of the undesirable behavior while we teach the dog replacement behaviors or what we want to do instead. And typically how I would get that on board is usually by putting up like a temporary construction fence in front of the existing fence so that they can't go nose to nose anymore. Because usually it happens when the dogs are nose to nose. If we can get a good like 6 feet, we can have just a more harmonious experience in the yard. And then we would put together probably a yard protocol after that. Reducing visual access to the other dogs might help, but if the scent of being nose to nose is part of that, it may not. So they do make like mesh for the gates and stuff like that that you can put up as a visual block. That might help. I don't know. But just something easy you can do is if you can figure out a way to discontinue that behavior, I would do a ton of mental enrichment in the yard. So I have a Doberman that used to jump the fence, and I trained him not to jump the fence. And now, frankly, he's too old to do it. So one of the things we did is we used a long line in the yard so that he physically could not reach the fence to jump over it anymore. And then I fed all meals outside. I gave all enrichment outside, and we did all training outside. And we did that in the middle of the yard so that he associated kind of staying in a particular area with more positivity than jumping the fence, right? And then after a while, and I trained an emergency recall too. Then after a while, he just stopped thinking that was interesting because I taught him when you're outside, you go potty and then we lay down and we relax, or we use our brains and we use these good behaviors, right? So I love to lean into that sort of passive training, passive enrichment, give your dog like a frozen Kong or scatter their kibble all over in the grass and really just kind of let them go to town. Particularly if the other dog is outside, then we are creating positive associations to the sound of that other dog. But your dog is actually doing most of the work when we use enrichment. So, and they're learning to, when I hear that dog, I lay down and I work on my things. So just making sure that your dog is not bored in the yard too.
Yeah. I think the tricky part is if you, for example, want to go to work and leave your dog outside, that's something you'd probably have to manage. Yeah, and not do that. And if the dog's outside, you're out there with it, would you say?
Absolutely, yeah. So I also sit on the board with a rescue, and yeah, I mean, depending on where you are here, see, there could be some cultural differences too with leaving your dog outside. I'm definitely not blind to that because there are some areas in my country where obviously there are farm dogs that live outside and stuff like that. But I always just tell people be really careful if you leave and go to work and leave your dog outside or have doggy door access or something like that, because, particularly we had this other woman who wrote in that said the dogs jumped a 6-foot fence and came and attacked her dog. Anything can happen to your dog if you're not home. So for me, I always just tell people just liability and safety wise, it's always just good to, lock that dog door or not have your dogs outside. Because
Well, we get snakes here. My dogs are in the home when I'm not here because I don't know what a deadly snake could come in the yard, and I could come back and there'd be dead dogs. But even things like somebody accessing your fenced yard and leaving the gate unlocked or open, and the dog's gone. So yeah, I'm more just for safety of the dogs. I know people worry about fires if there's a house fire, but I think there's more. Oh God, I don't want to jinx anybody, but I'd be more worried about leaving them out and what could happen, sort of thing. So yeah.
I think when you're talking about the chances of a house fire versus the chances of them ingesting something, getting bit by something, getting attacked by something, the chances are a lot more for an unattended dog outside than anything else. And obviously farm dogs that's a completely different ball of wax. We're talking about pet dogs right now, right?
Yeah,
so I don't want a bunch of angry emails from people who are like, my guardian breed. That's what I want to talk about.
we'll get to Elaine's question, but I'll just see. Marion, I should say. She says never leave Anubis outside on her own. Oh, there you go. But next door neighbour's dogs leaves theirs out when they're not out. When they're out, yeah. And the dog barking. Yeah, that's hard. I mean, their dogs are triggering at newbie, obviously, by the looks of things, sound of things.
Yeah. So if you don't have the capability of setting up that temporary fence to reduce nose-to-nose contact or any of the visual blocks, then if it's possible for you to bring your dog out to the farthest part of the yard if they have to potty and your neighbors aren't home, right? This is where it gets really tricky then, because I know it can be really hard to ask your neighbors anything without them getting defensive and causing
Yeah.
a fight.
Yes.
But if you're at all on good terms with your neighbor, I always tell my clients, especially when they hire me, if you're on good terms with them, can we just like ask them, if you notice my dog out, can you not let yours out? Like, we're in training, and just kind of try to coordinate things. And some neighbors are really lovely and some just are not. So I don't know.
Take
That's
him a box of chocolates and some
yeah, bring
flowers.
some donuts or something. And hey,
Yeah.
I'm trying to train my dog. Can
And
you
take some dog treats for their dogs as well, because then it
Yeah.
shows you love dogs. All right, Elaine, my question is very similar to the previous one. 12-year-old, previously completely P-pad trained Yorkie, continues to urinate on the appropriate P-pad areas. However, she has begun defecating in inappropriate areas, mainly soft surfaces, including her own heated electric beds, her pet parents, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, king size bed, rugs. Oh, she knows this is inappropriate and yet continues to do so. This occurs with her pet parents present. I would be wanting to get a vet check.
Yes. Yeah. Wanting to defecate on soft surfaces might be telling me that it's uncomfortable to get into the position needed to defecate and bear down particularly. So that would be my concern, is maybe the pee pad is too slippery or something like that. Maybe there's some pain going on, especially in this dog in a more advanced age. And then also just making sure that we aren't punishing in any manner when the inappropriate place is used, because we don't want to associate going potty with anxiety, which can be sometimes why dogs hide to do it, because they're like, well, I know I'm going to get in trouble, and so I'm going to hide over here and do it instead. So again, having those treat parties and praise when the appropriate place is used, but I would agree with the vet check 100%.
Mm.
So
Because also, I don't know how well your dog is, but you've got cognitive decline, gastro issues, could be anything like that. So yeah, vet check for sure.
and
Okay,
I'm
then
not assuming you're punishing your dog or anything. I'm just
no.
throwing it out there. Just
Yeah. It's good information just in case. Melissa says my boy Joey is a mixed bag of breeds. Perhaps an Amstaff, Cooley, Ridgeback, some others. Rescue, very anxious. Thundershirt, Kongs, and stuff help with his anxiety. However, when he is really anxious and goes into freeze mode and starts shaking, I feel lost on what I can do. When does he shake, Melissa? Like what's the context? Sorry, go on, Jessie.
yeah, same question. As I don't have any. I would need to know what's happening when he's going into freeze mode and
Yeah,
shaking.
is it a noise thing? Is it another dog? Is it a person? Is it different circumstances? Thunder, planes, overhead. Okay, so sensitive noise sensitivity then?
Yeah,
Sounds like.
yeah, again, here, vet check, I think with any noise sensitivity with clients, I am immediately on the let's check for pain for
Yeah.
that. Particularly you're describing a lot of everyday things once again that are very triggering to a dog. So I think this is kind of getting into, again, diagnosis territory with a veterinary professional. Because once your dog is already shaking or nervous like that and these sounds are sudden, there is actually not a whole lot that we can do for them right there past the point of being a logical being anymore. They're in fight or flight. So
Stop thinking.
yeah, unfortunately
And
there's
stop learning as well.
yeah, and they're not learning the right lessons anymore. I always just tell people, if your dog likes to be comforted, please do comfort them. There's this old train of thought where don't comfort your dog when they're fearful because you're going to reinforce the fear. We cannot reinforce instinctual emotions. They happen instinctually. So if they like to be comforted, please do that. That's something you can do in the moment. If you know a storm is coming, does your dog like to hunker down? Can we build like
Safe
a
place for
den
them
for
too.
them, right? That gets tough with things like airplanes though, right? That's not suitable for every situation, but um
He loves the wardrobe, feels safe at the wardrobe. Yeah. Do you
yeah.
know, I had a Roddy years ago and she was noise phobic, which it was just storms. And I worked in an office, my husband was working as well. And if there was a storm coming, we'd be like, oh no, what is she going to go to? But I had that, I felt guilty for this for years that her, I was told I wasn't a dog trainer, I didn't know anything about dogs except as a pet. Don't comfort her. You're just going to make it worse. 7 years of her life, she had to, and I would be there going, ignoring her, and I just, because I thought these are the people that know the best. They're the experts. They know what they're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what, I'll just do what I'm told. And I still feel guilty to this day. And so when she was 7 and there was a storm and I was cooking and she was pressed up against me while I was cooking at the stove, which she never ever did. She just, hang out or lie around or whatever. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I started to comfort her and try to make her feel better. But I still feel guilty about it. Even now, when I'm talking about it, I can feel those emotions coming up because I just feel so guilty that I didn't help her through that. Yeah.
I'm sorry you were given.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know, do you?
Yeah,
Do
that's
your
I
best for
always
your
tell
dog.
my clients feel guilty like this all the time,
Yeah.
especially when they sit down with me and they learn things they never have learned before. They've had various other traditional trainers and stuff, and then they feel even worse sometimes. So I always just tell them we're only as good as the knowledge that we currently have, right?
Yeah.
And when we know better, we can do better, and it's okay. So
Yeah. 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 Um, okay. I think we're finished with the questions then. Hopefully, here we go. So Elaine just says follow up. My senior Yorkie does have a luxating patella. Her vet was informed of this behavior and was baffled. I have put anti-fatigue max underneath the pet pads. There's no negative punishment ever. Good girl. Only positive redirection, tons of praise, treats for every single appropriate use of the pee pads, whether for urination or defecation.
luxating patella is one of the, how do I want to say this? This is one of those conditions that is really under medicated. So, especially in the lower grade patellas, there's a lot of disbelief that it's uncomfortable. The only way that dogs can convey that something is uncomfortable is through their behavior. So that is a change in behavior. And sometimes it's just not recognized as the appropriate type of change in behavior, right? But yeah, if your dog stopped eating, you would go to the vet and get workups and stuff like that. So suddenly stopping pooping on the pads is interesting to me. And
Mm.
if you can advocate or are comfortable advocating, ask for a pain trial. I didn't tell you that though. Don't drop my name. No, but sometimes I think just push a little bit for it. Especially I think you said 12 years old
Yeah.
and luxating patella. Yeah, I would be really concerned there, even just for arthritis. So,
Mm.
like I said, 80% of dogs over the age of 8, according to the Canine Arthritis Management Institute, have arthritis. Only 50% of dogs are ever diagnosed with that by the age of 8. So there are a lot of dogs out there, I think, that are kind of suffering unnecessarily just from lack of information. So I would advocate if I were you, or get a second opinion. I know there are pain specialists in my area, in the Chicagoland area, and there are actual like canine pain specialists. So that might be a route that I would choose to go if that resource is available to you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Even
Jessie,
even vet behaviorists are really great at doing pain trials too. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Jessie, what is your, she gets GLM powder oil and PEA. I'm not sure what PEA is.
Yeah, so all of those are going to be great for, I don't know exactly what, a green lip muscle powder, I know what that is.
Ah, yes, yeah, yeah.
EA. On the spectrum of like maintenance, I think that's good, kind of just taking care of the joints, but they're not necessarily pain reducing things. They'll
Yeah.
reduce inflammation, which is a huge part of pain, especially if she does have arthritis or something like that. There's pain from inflammation, and there can be nerve pain too, and which are two totally different types of pain. So
Yeah, yeah. Jessie, what is your, so people can reach out to you. Give me your email or type it in the chat. Not your email, your website.
it's mindfulmethodstraining.com.
Okay, and what have you got resources on there? How can people reach out to you? Have you got a booking calendar or email you or
Yeah.
contact?
So when you pull up my website, if you're on mobile particularly, there's a pop-up bar that says call or email at the bottom, but I have a contact tab. I will also type in my email here for you guys.
Yeah, cool. info@mindfulmethodstraining.com.
I am on all socials, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram as @mindfulmethodstraining. You can also message me there.
Yeah, cool. And so if they're struggling with something, do you do online consultations as well?
Yeah, I do. I work remotely all over the world, and then in the Chicagoland area, I'm in person. So
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. That sounds great. All righty, everybody, thank you. Don't think there's any more questions. So thank you so much, Jessie, and thank you everybody for joining us as well. It's great that you're not just looking at the doggy part of the equation, but how significant a role the human plays as well.
thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. That was really flattering. Just yeah, it was lovely.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Can you send me links to your Facebook groups, because I don't think I found them all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So whichever ones your active ones are, I would love to join those.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty. Elaine says I need those self-help suggestions in the handout. Well, you can email
reach out. I'll send you my handout.
Yeah. All right, lovely. Thanks, Jessie. Have a great day or evening, I guess.
So much, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, guys. Bye.